Welcome to Brooklyn, and welcome to this magnificent monument to the Gilded Age, smack dab in the middle of hipster Brooklyn. You've seen that David has adopted the hipster way with the full beard. He didn't do the lumberjack shirt today, and you'll note that I am resisting that trend and not wearing any black today. So. Just to set the stage. So as David said, what I'm going to talk about is some brand new fresh research. So we just got some of these results back a couple of weeks ago, so I'm still analyzing them. So this is real-time stuff. But the way I'm going to try to tell the story is to take 3 surveys, 2 new ones. One we did in January of the street fight audience. So it's a sort of an executive survey of the supply side, of people that sell to the local marketers and commerce companies. And then one we just did right now of about 300 small businesses. And then I'll put in a little bit from last year's survey of multi-location brands. We're just about to kick off this year's version of that, so we'll be looking for new things to examine, to dig into with them. And since there's going to be 3 different sources of data, which is going to be completely confusing, I'll try to make sure that it isn't and wrap their stories around them, but I've been using some color coding. So whenever you see a red or brown, reddish brown kind of a bar, that's reflecting the executive survey, so the supply side, the tech companies. And then if you see green stuff, it's the local merchants, the small businesses. And if you see blue bars, it's the multi-location brands. So that should make it pretty clear. And we'll talk about what's hot in industry R&D, what the local merchant spending and needs look like, look at everybody's customer needs, and then take a quick look at the outlook. So start off with the state of Hyperlocal. So this is the vendor survey. So we asked the question, what were the overall top challenges facing the industry, the hyperlocal marketing and commerce industry in a whole? And online to offline attribution popped up at top. I suspect that's the same with a bunch of you out there. There's still a complex ecosystem. There's some consolidation obviously going on, and there's obviously some domination in the industry already by companies like Google and Facebook and Apple, so you have to figure out how to live within that umbrella there. But those are the key challenges. And their R&D priorities, what they're investing in the near term to either solve these problems or take advantage of new opportunities, tends to line up with that pretty well. So the top priorities of these companies, when we ask them to pick their top 3, again, online to offline attribution. So biggest problem in the industry, they're investing to try to solve it. Local presence and listing management, I think that reflects our customer base, or the street fight audience base a bit, but you will see that that's a key issue for both small businesses and multi-location brands. And then location data and analytics, is that a solution to a problem perhaps? Is investing in the data going to be the best way to solve the attribution problem perhaps? So I tee that up as a potential. Mobile, of course, is still hot, and social media marketing is hot, and that reflects what the buy side says as well. Things that there are not as high on that list of priorities include some really hot topics from last year, like chatbots and beacons from 2 years ago, and maybe AR and VR. And this is not high on the radar screen of the companies that we were talking about. It'd be interesting to compare that with your own results. So from a perspective of our R&D trends, I would say that online to offline attribution is a continuing theme, and you'll see that in the customer survey results as well. Data analytics and social media and maybe mobile, maybe payments as well. If wallet adoption takes in, that could be partial solution to attribution and the question of is my marketing actually getting people in my store? Since local sites are a high priority these days, what is the differentiation there? Is it scalable management? Is it the SMB operating system built into other things? Personalization? Can you replace your sites? I think this is an interesting ongoing discussion with things like a Facebook company page or a Google My Business listing. Are these actually viable alternatives to managing your own website, particularly for a small business, but maybe even for local sites for multi-location brands. I'm not sure I think it is, but we'll see. That's something to look at and something to talk about throughout the day. I think that you've heard us already put voice on stage first, although voice in the context of other forms of assistance. We've been big fans of voice for a while now. It's going to have a huge impact on how you structure your, how do you define SEO in a voice-based world? It's going to be a big deal. So I think that wallets may be underestimated as well, although adoption is still slow. And one thing we found out when we surveyed multi-location brands is that the use of video, streaming video, correlated with successful marketing operations. So that's a kind of like a new hot button, I think, with a lot of people. I don't think we're going to see beacons and on-demand services make a big comeback anytime soon in people's minds. So then we asked the supply side, the vendors again, what they thought their customers were spending on. Social media marketing, local sites, the top two things, mobile right after it. And then let's compare that to what their customers are actually saying. So this slide illustrates what percentage of the respondent base, the blue bar represents the brands and the green bar represents our brand new research on small businesses, which of them said, how many of them said they were increasing spending on the following 6 categories. You can see that social media is the top for both brands and local merchants. The brands are also very keen on websites, and the small businesses are too. A couple of other things to take away from this. This is what increase. When we asked if they were going to maintain their spending, it was way over 50%. So add another 50 points to each of those responses. So the good news is most everybody is either maintaining or increasing their spending across the board on digital tactics. The bad news, if it is bad, and we'll need to explore this a bit more, is that the small businesses appear to have cooled a little bit. So last year, we surveyed a group where we oversampled larger small businesses, companies that spent $25,000 or more a year on marketing and had 10 employees or more. And we did that on purpose, but even when we correct for that this year, it feels like some of the momentum has eased. So all these increased numbers were a couple points higher at least last year. So maybe things are just cooling off a bit. Maybe social media has lost a little of its luster. Some things to look at, I think, in more detail. So spending right now is pretty well synced. Social media and mobile, which are mostly the same thing in many cases, are right at the top. Local site spending's up high. Email marketing is a tried and true, and people are still maintaining and increasing spending, both big brands and small businesses. So anyway, if you're not in the email business, if you can offer marketing and advertising technologies and services that complement email, email is still the biggest driver, I think, for most retailers of sales from a digital perspective. And then paid search, which is undergoing great changes with different sources, people starting at Amazon these days, with voice and other sort of alternative media coming into this play. I think there could be a little bit of disruption there, so probably something to look at pretty closely. Now let's dig in a little bit more to the local merchants' spending. So we asked them, this is just to sort of characterize them, and over half of the local merchants we surveyed, nearly a third of the local merchants we surveyed spent over half of their budget on digital, and a significant portion on either end were either 0 digital or 100% digital. I don't think that's necessarily related to how old the companies is, although I think a lot of companies start digital first, so you'll see some younger small businesses being digital only. And then we asked them, are they going to increase their digital mix? Are they going to move more spending into digital versus traditional? And it is increasing, and it's increasing for the 10+ employees. The bigger small businesses, the bigger local merchants are moving into digital more aggressively, probably because they actually are also using traditional media. They have a budget for both sides, but they're obviously the sweet spot is the customer target. Another look at what they're doing in the, remember that spending slide that I was sort of nervous about because the numbers seem to be a little bit down. If you actually compare the small local merchants with the bigger ones, the 10 plus employees, you can see that across the board, they're 10 points higher in terms of the percentage of them that said they were increasing their spending. So doubling, reinforcing the message that the bigger ones are the better customers. Although we have seen that if you get in early with a small company, as they grow, they will increase spending. So it's a kind of a momentum play. So it's worth the trouble if you can get your foot in the door at a small company with tech and services, because as they grow and see success, they're likely to increase more and more and more. So from the spending patterns we're seeing this year, shift to digital is continuing. Again, some of the companies we're going to start there first. The larger merchants are sort of shifting faster because a lot of the multi-location brands have been using digital primarily to drive awareness and traffic to their e-commerce sites rather than to their local branches or stores or resellers. So they're getting more aware of this, and they're moving money into support, and they're moving digital into local, whereas the local merchants are moving traditional into digital. They're moving digital into local. So I think this is a good positive sign for the industry. I did note, though, that the small businesses seem a little muted, and we'll be checking very carefully with that on when we survey the multi-location brands later this month. Social media is still a top topic, but it might be cooling a little. And so we wondered, is it cooling because of the Facebook controversies? So this is, the question we asked was something along the lines of, Facebook's generated a lot of controversy lately. They've been associated with user information leaks. They've been associated with fake news. They've been associated with Russian meddling in American politics. Has this affected the way you think, the way you feel about Facebook as a marketing platform? And what we found was 27% weren't using Facebook at this point, and the majority, over 50% of the ones of everybody, said hasn't really affected them, or they're a little uncomfortable, but they're not changing anything. And a relatively small percentage said they were either going to re-examine things or look into it. And when you strip out the people that don't use Facebook at all, it becomes almost 80% saying we're not going to change things. But that does mean that it's 22% that said they were. So 1/5 of the small businesses are reevaluating Facebook, and so that's an issue. So that may have some of the answer for that slowdown in social media enthusiasm. But maybe they need to prove things as well. Maybe we need more ROI from that one. So another thing that I think we'll be looking at, a theme throughout the day, and we touched on it, well, didn't touch on it, the first panel was all about it, is, let me hold off on the first panel was all about it. Let's set up this theme first and then get back to that one. So this theme is about the website usage. So there has been a lot of new features. Facebook has added a lot of features to the company pages, made it much more robust for handling reviews. People who count such things say that there are more reviews on Facebook now than there are on Yelp. So this is a big deal. And then Google My Business listings is just a constant 6-month progression of new features every time, and becoming a richer and richer environment for businesses in general, for local promotion. So we wanted to find out what small businesses were doing with their sites. It's all about product information. It's sort of shocking that less than half of them are using it for their business location information. Clearly they need some help on that, everybody. Good opportunity there. And things like photos and let alone user-generated content or exciting new things like videos, or exciting new opportunities like scheduling appointments or checking inventory or something like that. See, they're pretty simple. Basically these are pretty basic. So it does feel like you could do a lot of substitution, potentially. So we asked them. We said, considering those last things we just asked you about, considering the most important things you do with your website, do you think you could actually replace it, and with what? And so almost half of them said they couldn't replace their site. And then the others were kind of a mixed bag across different options. Facebook company page still shows up highest, and Google My Business listing is right after it. Enhanced listings in a variety of places also plays a role. So my takeaway from this is it's kind of the idea that that something else other most sites still need both. You know, most brands need their own local sites, but they also need a complementary strategy for a social media page and a Google My Business listing. But a good half of the small businesses do not think they're going to ever replace it. So there's a half that might. So this is the one that I wanted to get for the relate to the first panel. So we asked, this is about the way I defined SMB operating system when we asked the question was integrating front office functions like marketing and advertising with back office functions like supply chain management and CRM and customer and inventory management, things like that. And so we asked that with a bunch of other technical characteristics. So one takeaway is that there is interest in the concept of that back-end, front-end office, or back office, front office integration. It's very important for almost a quarter of the small businesses we survey, and those reactions were higher when they were bigger. So it might be counterintuitive. It might be that you might think that the integrated stack is more appropriate for a one-stop shopping super small business, but it's actually the bigger companies that are maybe starting to think about doing things like CRM that are arguably the better target. And I'll also observe that although it's important, if you're sort of ranking it with some other technology features, these are, some apples and oranges going on here, but things like customer service and support and time to get your product or the technology up and running rated higher than integration or one-stop shopping. We will need to dig in deeper into this and find out what other characteristics were the companies who had those attitudes, and so I've just gotten started on that, but that's a takeaway. So Facebook controversies, not a big impact, although 1/5 of the ones that use it are bugged, seriously bugged. Half of local merchants are open to website substitutes, and then the SMB OS concept, perhaps counterintuitively, appeals to the slightly larger local merchants. So let's look at customer needs in general, and then I'll tie it all up with some new technologies. We asked the local merchants what their top objective was, and so this is sorted by funnel. So as you go down the marketing funnel from awareness to service and support, that's kind of the way it's ordered. And you can see that small businesses, even the bigger ones, are still primary objective is new customer acquisition. Although the larger merchants, particularly notably with their social media efforts, were interested in actually generating revenues, generating real transactions from their social media efforts. That's an interesting opportunity that we need to dig into and see how that would work. When we asked them where they needed the most help, they need help everywhere, right? There's no silver bullet here or no dominating response. SEO and company sites are right at the top. But they still need a lot of help with social media and mobile, which again are sometimes the same thing. And then you get into sort of the nitty-gritty details of things. So again, the site is where they feel like they need the most help. We also looked at what they said was their most effective and also their least effective tactics that they used regularly. And Facebook and social media is at the top, and email marketing is number 2. That's the same way it was last year. Social media is a little bit muted in effect this year, but it's the same kind of a thing. So if you zero in on where they didn't give it a good rating, they didn't put it in their top 3, there's plenty of opportunity when solving those where they need help problems to help them integrate that with things like display ads, traditional media, and search, obviously, paid search rather than SEO. And finally, when you're trying to sell to these guys, what is important? Where do they want to hear information about your product from? Their top response was a customer reference, and peer referrals were right after that. And then things like product demonstrations and ratings and review on third-party sites and stuff. So if you can bring them customer references or introduce them to customers, or maybe even introduce them to companies who are their peers or show case studies like that, I think, although case studies, as pure case studies didn't seem to move the needle very much there. Those would be the top sales tools. Let's look at the brands. We asked them what their biggest challenges were. So rank what's here's a bunch of things that are about digital media, local digital marketing. What is really tough, most difficult, and what is pretty difficult on a 5-point scale. And again, ROI and attribution, including online to offline attribution, ranked first. A lot of concerns about customer data, and they're also managing the information from multiple suppliers is right up there. So these are guys that are using, their customer information is coming from multiple sources and multiple suppliers, and the more you can do as a provider to help them clean that up and integrate it and make it comparable, the better off you'll be. We also looked at their most and least effective tactics. Email was on the top for them, as I sort of hinted at earlier. Paid social media right after that, and online display ads. This is a big branding bunch, so they're still doing a lot of that. Things that they didn't seem to be pulling off as effectively in support of their local branches and stores and resellers were things like paid search, and they're just getting started in geo-targeting mobile ads. Right now, I think mobile advertising is still a reach play rather than a real sort of a focused targeting play. So they're spending money on mobile because that's where the eyeballs are, as opposed to using it in a more sophisticated fashion yet. I think a lot of the companies I talk to that are collecting local, third-party location data are using it for customer analysis and audience segmentation and things rather than targeting. But I think that's about to shift. So the big needs would be SEO and paid search, so there's still a sort of big discovery hole. Mobile is still, I think, a reach play, and it's still largely with larger businesses rather than smaller businesses. It's with the big brands. Social media is at top of mind, and ratings and reputation management and review management within social media is, I think, a big area. And then don't forget that traditional media is still out there, and it is absolutely a multi-channel world, and customers are getting touched everywhere. So let's just take a quick look at new technologies, and then I'll be around to answer questions all day. So we asked the vendors, we asked them their R&D priorities, and then we said, what are you investing in for a longer term payoff? Not something that's going to give you payback in the next year or two. Location data was at the top, geo-targeting and fencing, AI, but used for analytics, and voice technology outpaced a lot of the other buzzwords, including the old ones that have been fading, or some of the new ones like the SMBOS, although it's just rising on their radars. And then we asked the local merchants what they thought, what new tech was interesting to them, and they're keen on payments and wallets. So I think they're accommodating. I think it's more about payments now and wallets later. So they're highly concerned with accommodating mobile payments, which is only just getting started in consumer adoption. They say they're interested in real-time data. I'm not sure what they would do with it, but they say they're interested in it. And then some of them are starting to explore things like streaming and push marketing. When you ask the same or similar question to the big brands, location data is at the top of their list last year. We'll check that if that's changed this year. They're definitely trying to think they're going to move into the targeted push mobile marketing, and addressable TV and programmatic local ad buying are definitely high on their radar screens. So those would be the top opportunities. So my key takeaways, and again, I'll be around to answer any questions all day long. And I'd love your feedback, because I'm still working on designing the brand survey, and I want to figure out what to do with the analysis we should look at with the other ones as well. So R&D seems to be pretty much in sync. The small businesses still like social media. They may have cooled a little bit, but they're kind of open. There's an opportunity in the whole integrate the stack or integrate the back and front office, and half of them said they could probably do some substitution of their sites with other properties. Customer needs discovery, through both new customer acquisition, but also through SEO and getting people to your local sites is still a very top priority, and mobile is becoming more and more actually local. ROI proving and attribution proving is top of everybody's challenge list. And I think the location data is going to shift to targeting. I do think that's going to happen this year. It started that way. Remember when people were initially buying third-party data, it was for targeting. Then more people got involved and they started using it for other things. And now I think it's going to go back. Now I think it's going to shift back again. And I also think that the location data is probably one of the slam dunk solutions. It's not easy, but one of the best solutions to actually proving online to offline attribution. So that is a good, you've got a sort of a two-pronged effort if you're in that location data space. So I appreciate your attention. Like I said, I'll be around. Drop me a line if you have suggestions or questions or want a copy of the slides or something. We're going to take a break now and come back at about in 20 minutes, I think. Or so. So again, thanks for your time, and I'll talk to you throughout the event.